first and foremost, I heard you say something about the music aspects of this film unlocks the fantasia of it all. So for you, I'm just wondering how using the combination of your documentarian background combined with the animation brain that you needed to use for this helped you bring it all together.
For me, it was such a fun way to play because I don't get to do that stuff much in documentary, and suddenly like being able to take Pharrell's imagination and try and see his imagination, that was the thing that got me really excited. So when he started talking about, when the first time I interviewed him for this, and he was talking about his synesthesia, which means he sees color when he hears music. I just thought, oh my God, well, we could see that. We could actually see what he sees or some version of it. So, every song in the movie, I would ask him what the colors of the song were. So it gave me a guide. It was like, oh, well, he sees this song is like an emerald green with a gold, edge on it or something, and I'm like, okay, well, that just gives me something to work off of. Like, it's kind of amazing raw material for an animated movie. And then just trying to both craft a story, but then craft a visual story that matches, the kind of magical thinking of Pharrell, which is great. Like, it's the freedom was amazing. You don't get all that freedom normally.
I think I heard you say that one of the scenes that you animated was the one of my favorite scenes, the ones with the Stevie Wonder music where he starts to see color. Can you talk about that particular sequence, since you did touch upon him seeing color a little earlier?
Yeah. So when we first started to work on this, we weren't 100% sure it was going to work. We weren't sure Lego was going to say yes. We weren't sure people were going to give us enough money to make it. And so we did this little proof of concept because Pharrell had told me about being a boy and listening to his stereo, and that he would see colors coming out of the speakers, and that particularly people like Stevie Wonder. And so I cut together this little piece. It's maybe 90 seconds, and we animated it in Lego just to see, like, is this idea going to work? And it turned out so great that everybody I showed it to said, I want to see that movie. Whatever that movie is, I want to see that movie. And Lego said yes, and then Universal Pictures and Focus said yes, and like it just became the proof that this would actually work. But that moment was kind of the key moment for us to see how this could all work. I mean, the synesthesia was like unlocking the connection between the real world and the imaginary world that exists in music all the time, but we could actually see it.
One of my other favorite scenes was the gospel choir, because you guys perfectly animated the way people would really behave as though they're singing in a choir or in a church, listening to the choir sing. I got my entire life with that segment right there. I had never seen anything like that before.
I did a film called 20 Feet from Stardom, which is a lot about, I spent a lot of time dealing with women that came out of gospel singing in churches, and so we talked about that, and I put in clips of movies to look at to figure it out. And then for that song, we actually got Charlie Wilson from the Gap Band to sing that song, because that song is a Pharrell song that he used to sing lead on. But then I had the idea that his preacher would sing this song to a young Pharrell because of the advice of that song. And Pharrell was like, you got to get Uncle Charlie, so Charlie Wilson did it and killed it. He was great. So he's our pastor.
I love that. That is one of my favorite sequences in the whole film. And yes, I'm very familiar with the fact that you did 20 Feet from Stardom, among other things, which is one of the other reasons I really wanted to talk to you. What do you think was the most surprising thing during this process that you learned about Pharrell? And what would you say is your favorite song of his coming out on the other side of this?
I grabbed a bunch of songs from like NERD, songs like Sooner or Later or Maybe, that are not that famous, but to me, I just love those songs, and they felt like songs that were telling a story in a movie, so um, I love that. And I didn't, spending all that time going through all of his music, I was constantly surprised. I mean, not only, it's the hits, but it's like, oh, he's working on, he's doing this and he's doing that. I mean, it's funny, the time we've been making the movie, he hasn't bragged about this much, but he actually just finished getting a master's degree in musical composition. So, he's working on classical music and things like that. This is what he does with his spare time. And now he's going for a PhD. So, the man does not rest. And that's something I did not know. So it's something to live up to.
That's something I didn't know either. That was amazing intel. Thank you for that, Morgan. I appreciate you. If you had to do this all over again, what would you keep the same about the process and what would you do differently?
I think if we had just had, and, a lot more time and money. So
that's hilarious.
Basically, the film is exactly what we wanted to make, but it just meant that we had to really work so hard. And, in animation, going backwards is hard. And so we knew that. And it's expensive to go backwards. So we really had to think like 4 steps ahead of like, what's this going to be like when it all fits together? And so, it was intense. I felt like it was like playing 4-dimensional chess for years, trying to figure this out.
That's a good analogy. That's very visual. I love that. Speaking of chess,
yeah,
the title Piece by Piece. What does that mean to you now? Does it mean piece by piece of a person's life, piece by piece of their artistry, piece by piece of their music? What does that mean for you now?
To me, when Pharrell pitched me on this, and I first started thinking about it, I didn't, kind of intentionally, I didn't want to think about the enormity of the mountain it was that we were going to climb. I thought about the path in front of me that was interesting. And it's kind of like you just take a step at a time and you go to the next thing. You don't want to have to think they're going to climb Everest. You're like, okay, I'm just going to take a step. And in a way, you put together movies that way, and you put together songs that way. And it's really just adding one thing, layering one thing on top of another. And so to me, it's the kind of the piece by piece is the creative process. It's like you're just adding ingredients and trying to make something one element at a time until suddenly it magically is finished.
I love that. You have the most beautiful way with words. And why am I surprised? I'm so not surprised by that. I shouldn't be surprised by that because you are such a beautifully craftsman when it comes to documentarian filmmaking. You are so wonderful at it. And I am so elated that I had this opportunity to speak to you about this film. It's one of my favorites of the year. And I'm so glad that you're the person that's attached to it because you're one of my favorite documentarians as well.
Oh, thank you. It's great talking to you.
Great talking to you too, Morgan. Thank you.
All right. Take care.